So as you're growing as a leader, you're tired of hearing what the old people have been doing, what made their successes. The problem is, that was a different environment. That was a different time. We are not in that time. Would you like to hear from somebody who's actually going through the leadership challenges in this day, in this age, in this time? I'm Eric with Leadership Developed. This week we're going to talk with Tori Brodsky, the CEO of Besa Mi Vino and the founder of Drink Light. And while she's in charge, while she's leading those two organizations, she's also going for her MBA at the Anderson School of Business at UCLA. This successful young leader has come through the same challenges that you come through. It's just she's found success through trial and error. We're going to talk to her today about what she learned as she's growing as a leader, what she feels is important for her organization to be successful, and be able to pass on to you hope, ideas, strategies that will make you successful as she's successful. Thank you, Tori, for joining us here tonight for this show.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it. And I love watching all of your leadership content, especially since you come with the context and experience of military, which I appreciate.
Oh, thank you very much. Start off, you're from California. Where did you grow up?
Yes. So I grew up in kind of a small town called Orangeville, California, which is somewhere between like Sacramento and Tahoe area. And I went to do my undergrad at UC Berkeley. So I lived in the Bay Area. And then ever since then, I've been living in Southern California. And so I grew up in a single parent household. I was raised by my single mother. And for a few years, also my grandmother, the two women together. And my mom has 4 kids. So it was 4 of us growing up. I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister. And so that was very fun. And we went to a very like hands-on learning Montessori type K through 8 school, which I mentioned because a lot of it, looking back, was focused on peer-to-peer learning. So getting up, getting into groups with kids and getting up and, being a leader or doing public speaking in front of your class, teaching each other things. And a lot of it was also hands-on learning. So I'd say like 20 to 30% of the time we were outside and we were on field trips, or we were actually did a lot of learning by doing, which I think kind of established a really great foundation of leadership. And so shout out to Orangeville Open. It was a really great program.
Excellent. And so in high school, you were groomed very much to be a leader for an organization within your school clubs.
Yes, that's correct. So my high school, despite it kind of being just part of a rural small town, had a very critically and nationally acclaimed yearbook journalism program. And I was lucky enough to be included into that program. It's invite only by the advisor after you go through a series of his English classes, and he evaluates your writing and your leadership style. And it's actually a pretty funny story because I was invited to the program, but I actually chose a different program that happened to be at the same time, which was the student council, which was kind of like where the popular kids were at. The yearbook program was like where all the nerds went. And so I chose right away the student council. Of course, I'm young and I want to be popular and cool. And then one day I'm literally out on the floor of our school stadium, and I'm making a homecoming poster, and the yearbook advisor comes and kind of stands over me, and he goes, okay, so are you going to be doing painting these sparkly posters for the next 4 years for homecoming, or are you going to become my editor-in-chief by the time you're senior? And my eyes were like so wide, and I was so surprised because editor-in-chief was like, that was a huge accolade, and it was a huge responsibility, and it was very well known, position at the program at my school. And so the fact that he had that much faith in me, I was like, well, I have to join now. This person really believes in me. And so, 3 years later, I was one of the editor-in-chiefs, and that was one of the best leadership experiences I've ever had in my life.
You did the classic identify, challenge, and boom.
Exactly. Precisely. He was great at that.
Good. Have you set core values for your 2 organizations that you run?
Yes, so primarily I am focused on BESA right now, and the core values for that are self-love and presence. And so living in the moment, which do happen to overlap with my personal values, which is why I'm so passionate about the brand and what I'm doing with the company. These core values, what I'm trying to figure out is, and I think other brands are doing this really well, is how to communicate this throughout your marketing and throughout your branding. And so right now I'm working on kind of retweaking our strategy online as far as how we come off. But the way that I'm doing it with our sales, for example, is that every time I connect with a new account, I approach it from that place of presence. And so it's not just about the sale. I want to get to know that person, behind the store or the on-premise account that I'm talking to, because really like business, no matter what, usually always comes down to personal relationships when it comes to decisions that matter. And it couldn't be more true for the beverage space, specifically the alcohol space, even more specifically the wine space.
Right.
It's really a community of people who I think embody those same core values that we have, but it's just not talked about a lot on a sales call or in marketing. And so that's what we're trying to do differently.
It's pretty incredible that how that works out and how that just allows you to be not really doing a job, but doing what you love.
Yeah, and I think that's why I find myself in this position today is because 2019, 3 years ago, I met the founder of Besame Vino and I just fell in love with how he explained the brand and what he was doing. And I was so curious. And at the time, I was still launching Drink Light pre-pandemic. And so it was much different than what it is now today as an e-commerce company. But I always knew and always connected with the brand on that level. I thought there's something different here. Yeah, they're filling a white space, which is there's really no clean canned wine. There's a lot of canned wines. They come in all shapes and sizes and forms and, varietals and that sort of thing. But there's really no, let's be super clean, super organic, super sustainable as much as humanly possible, because that's kind of the shift of this next wine drinking generation, right? And
Right.
so yeah, I always knew that I'd eventually do something with the brand. It just, I didn't realize that I'd become the CEO.
Was that an invite, or were you part? Was it a competition? Or
Partially,
okay,
partially, yeah. It was the founder he and I had kept in touch over the past couple of years during the pandemic, and he had been raising money for the brand and he needed to go off and run his own family business, and so he could no longer have the CEO role. So he was looking for a CEO, and I had been helping him for a little bit. And I got to a point with Drink Light where I felt, okay, it's steady enough. I can hand this off to someone else to run. Now I'm going to go on to the next part of my career. And so I called Michael up and I said, Michael, I know you've been interviewing like these 40-year veterans of the wine industry. I know I have no wine experience, but I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And can we just see what happens? And then a month later, I was hired.
that's that's great. That's
Yeah,
boldness. That is, yeah, fortune favoring the bold right there, and that's why you are the leader.
thank you. Yeah,
You
I'm very
are.
excited.
So, what leadership challenges have you been working through? These examples that can be incorporated for other growing leaders, and as they're going through this, their scenarios as well.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think the first thing that came to mind was patience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few reasons for that to come to mind at this time. Number one, we've been closing a seed round of funding. And anybody who knows that's done startup funding, you know that it always takes longer and costs more. Anything in the startup world takes longer and costs more than you originally thought or planned for. And so even though this isn't my first rodeo with startup fundraising, and so I realized that I, as the leader, just realized this time is actually an opportunity. This time to be patient is a time to plan. And so there are going to be other times in other organizations where you might find yourself as a manager, right at a big corporation, waiting approval on something that you feel passionately about for, your team or something, and you are going to have to wait. And during that time of waiting, it's an opportunity. Don't sit there and think about the fact that you're waiting. Sit there and think about, how can we prepare, right? How can we prepare to not just start, but complete what we've set out to do? And so I think that my experience in the startup world has always been this, like, go at the speed of light and, putting out fires, setting up fires as quickly as possible. But then there are opportunities and there are times, that you will have more time, and you have to think, and that is time to strategize and time to connect and rethink the brand and rethink your direction. And that time is super, super precious. I also dealt with a really, really difficult health issue over the summer this year. And I had a concussion, and it put me out of commission for a while. And I basically, like my brain, I just didn't have the brain power nor as, that I would normally.
No.
And so that allowed me to think, okay, I need to lean on my team a lot more. I need to be authentic and transparent with them about what I can and can't do that's different from normal. And how can I still optimize this time while also taking care of myself? So I think as a leader, those challenges of when you personally face a challenge that requires your team to step up, you have to deal with that as a leader, right? And so that's also something that I've faced and that I found is really difficult. But what I've learned is that your team will step up given the opportunity, especially when it comes to you as a leader needing them. And when you give them that authority, right? Because you have to give them that authority, you're also giving them the option and the opportunity to lead. And it's really incredible to see what people can do when you give them that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you've gone through that this summer. That
Happens.
sucks, having one of your best muscles being bruised like that. And
Yeah, you never really think about your brain being bruised, but
right.
it's a tough, it's not a fun one.
Uh-uh. No. While you were working through that, I imagine now so for me, it's the awareness, when I hear things like that, it's the awareness of mental health, not that
Yeah.
you sustained, an injury, but just the ups and downs of the emotion going through it physically, spiritually, and mentally. So how has you as a leader been able to take care of yourself, take care of your team, take care of, your organization?
That's a great question, and something that I have always thought about in the back of my mind as to how can I incorporate this as something also a value, right? Because mental health is huge for me as a personal value. My father growing up dealt with bipolar schizophrenia, and he handled it by using drugs instead of actually medicating himself. And so, of course, mental health is just ingrained in, part of me as being a leader. Of course, no one has really cracked the code on how to make sure from, tip to toe that basically everybody in the organization is taken care of, right? Because it's a delicate topic. But I've learned that being authentic and vulnerable with your team is important to a certain extent, right? So you want to be able to say, look, remember, I'm human, but you want to do so in such a way that says, I'm human, but I also prioritize this as a part of my life, right? Because I think there's a challenge here where you can say, look, as an organization and as a team, we value everybody's mental health. But then you also want to make sure that you're not sacrificing the mission that you're on together, right?
Right.
And so you have to have that hard conversation of, okay, how can we make sure that everybody is still finding some sort of balance day to day? And I think that's the fallacy that people have, is that their life is going to be in balance, when in reality it comes down to the minutes and hours that you're spending together where there's balance. And so I find that on a micro level, that's where these mental health lessons can be learned. Yes, of course, you want to help, you want to promote, your team attending therapy and self-care and, that sort of thing. And I personally am a huge, I promote therapy. I go to therapy. I love it. I have a psychiatrist that I work with. I also have a leadership coach and a professional coach. And so I have, someone who's helping me with my mental health in my personal life. And then I have someone who's kind of helping me with mental challenges in my professional life. Um, and of course, I'm very open in talking about that with my team. But I also I clearly prioritize, physical health by saying, hey, this morning I'm going to yoga. Who wants to come with me? And making that just as casual and as easy as going to lunch, together with the team. And so that's another thing. But on a micro level, going back to that, I think that it's important to say in the middle of a meeting, sometimes you just have to pull back and say, I can feel there's something wrong in the room here, or after a meeting, you pull someone out to the side and say, there's something I'm feeling that's off, right, about you today. What's going on? Do you want to talk?
Right.
If you don't want to talk, that's fine. But just giving people the opportunity to, again, be human and express themselves and doing so in such a way that you understand that it is nuanced and it is a delicate conversation to have. But just listening, just listening to your people and making sure that they know that you're someone that they can come talk to. Because otherwise you might find yourself with a very high turnover rate because people just don't feel like they can live, their life anymore working for an organization where their mental health isn't valued.
We're watching the Great Resignation, I guess, right now, right? And people are learning to value themselves, value their personal time. And have you had that in any of your organizations, or you just within any of the relationships you've had with people, and just talking through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's definitely been times as a manager, and of course, most of my career has been a consultant, and so I've seen this more of in third person point of view than I have as an actual manager. But I have noticed in my own organizations, when you lose sight of your own mental health and things get really crazy, you tend to do so with everybody else who's around you. And so when things get really crazy and you're not taking care of yourself, I've seen a pattern that all of a sudden people are starting to recognize that they're not taking care of themselves, and it makes them want to leave. And so you have to be able to hold yourself accountable, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to hold everybody else accountable for their own mental health, and making sure that also you're holding your organization itself accountable, right? Are we doing the things that we said that we were going to do to support and help our people for whatever they're going through, right? It's harder and easier to do the smaller your organization is, right? Because you have less people to deal with. But I think that there's an opportunity as a small organization and a small business to really establish those norms early on, so that when you grow and you become a much larger organization, the managers that are running, everybody, that they were ingrained with those standards, right? And so I think that the key is setting the tone now when your organization is still small and young, so that you can carry it through and you're not having those, experiences where you've, taken someone from intern to VP and now they're unhappy and they're resigning, right? But I also think that you have to, and that's when it comes back to, allowing your team members to, growing trust with your team and allowing them to experience and fail. So for example, like the mentorship and internship program that we had at Drinklight was basically, here's a list of projects, take what you want, because it was a mentorship program as well, where we wanted college students to say, "Ooh, I want to try social media management. for this month. But next month, I want to try data analysis, right? And so you give them this autonomy and they're going to learn, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what they like, what they don't like. And therein lies freedom. And I think we're losing a lot of people in this great resignation, or a lot of great companies are losing great people because they're not giving them that freedom that they feel that they can now get elsewhere.
The fact that you actually already had an internship program and mentorship program within your organizations says you're light years ahead of most small businesses that are just growing who haven't even thought about using interns yet. What was that experience like for you as,
You're looking at the person and you're going, you're not much younger than me, but let's go, giddy up.
Yeah, well, I've had the luck of of working with people in my first job that were much older than me. And so the concept of age, I really threw away like very early on. When I started the e-commerce business at Drinklight, I really just I needed help. It was in the middle of pandemic. I was doing school and I thought, look, I would have killed to have this opportunity to work under a younger, female leader who's just a few years ahead of me, right? So I can kind of relate to that. And I got a little bit of that here and there, like in my early 20s, but not so much. And so I really catered this program to anybody, but it ended up being mostly women. And so we had about, at any point in time, 8 interns, typically from the undergraduate program at UCLA. And the way that, again, I framed it was just, look, this is an opportunity. You guys are clearly smart people. Here's things that need to get done, and at that point in time, they weren't like replacing full-time employees because it was still a very small, organization with just me, my business partner, hired consultants, and then these interns, where it was kind of like, hey, we're experimenting already. Might as well let someone learn something from this and put it on their resume and get a lot of experience out of it. And I'm really proud of that program because, our interns, a few of them went on to big companies like Deloitte, and now they're doing management consulting. And I'm really proud of them. And some are still with us today, and I'm transitioning them into actual employees for my new company. It's just been amazing to see kind of like, yeah, it's so much fun. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work because when you're working with people who are in college or fresh out of college, there's so much grooming and there's so much learning and there's so much, to teach them. But you also just have to let them do their own thing and learn on their own. Because again, going back to how to build trust within your organization, you have to give people the autonomy to own something. Because only then will they truly feel like they are part of your organization, right? And so that's why I think a lot of our interns have stayed with us, is because they know that they have that opportunity. They know that when Tori says, okay, Jesse, you're going to take this event and run with it, it's truly her event.
Nice.
And she can come to me for the support, right? And she can come back to, the older, more experienced people in the organization, but she knows that's hers and that her name is on that. And it's, she has full reign.
Yeah, that's great, especially for a BBA just trying to figure it out, going, I don't know what I'm good at.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun thing too, is to see, like, some of my favorite meetings, one-on-ones with interns, was sitting down with my intern, Catherine, and she's like, I will never do that stuff again. And I'm like, great, you learned something, because that's what I think a lot of people struggle with in their early 20s is they think, shoot, I got to get out of college and have things figured out and know what I want to do. No, you've got to experience as much as you possibly can to understand where you actually will shine and, what makes your heart go wild, because otherwise you might find yourself in an organization thinking, oh, I hate my job. I hate 9 to 5. Well, maybe you just hate what you're doing there.
I'm going to ask two quick rapid fire questions for you. That's why I didn't prep you on that one. First rapid question is always an easy one because you think about this all the time. So who's been your role model as you've been going through this experience?
Ooh, that's a great question, and I have a few of them. Number one is always going to be my older brother, Miles, who you know. He's
Mhm.
a pararescueman, and he kind of ingrained me, along with just the nature of my childhood, self-reliance. And
Right.
so I think that's where a lot of leadership, a lot of the foundations of leadership start with self-reliance, and just having ownership over who you are and your responsibilities. But in addition to Miles, obviously, my close to me, my advisors, Renee LeBron at UCLA Anderson, my executive coach, Jackie McNitt Ingalls, and of course, famous leaders or leadership coaches like Peter Drucker and of course, John Wooden. So
Oh yes.
yeah, I've got my little John Wooden leadership book of success.
Doesn't that come with your enrollment?
It does, yes.
Okay, so here's the one I didn't prep you on is who do you see if your life was in a movie, who do you see portraying you
Oh,
in
that's
the
so
life of Tori or
funny.
my
Okay, well, I have to say it's actually somebody that no one knows, even though everybody says I look like the actress Kristen Bell.
Mhm.
But I would have to actually say it's one of my interns, Elliot, who would play me. And that's because I think she already is. She's 20 years old.
Mhm.
She's so ahead of her time and her generation as far as leadership goes.
Mhm.
And she reminds me of myself, and I find myself getting so frustrated with her sometimes because I'm like, don't make that mistake. I did that, or I did this, or don't do this, go this way. But then I have to remember 20-year-old Tori would have totally written off anybody who told her what to do like that. So I have to just shut my mouth and just give her opportunities and make sure I'm there supporting her, because that's what she needs. And that's, I think, who would play me in a movie of my life.
As we finish this thing out, what are some things that you, as a leader, are concerned that other growing leaders, future leaders, need to understand from your point of view? You know, what best represents, how you embrace leadership as well? What you would like them to take away with?
I think what I would implore everyone to take away from this conversation is that leadership is more of a lifestyle than anything. And just like how, if you want to adopt a healthy lifestyle, you integrate the practices every day of working out, of drinking more water, of, healthy habits.
Mhm.
And that's the same that goes with leadership. It's really a habit building, and you can exercise it every day, even if you're not in a position of authority in your household or at your place of work, you can still be a leader. And so I think that idea is not talked about enough, but I want to encourage everyone who's listening to consider that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Tori Brodsky, the CEO of Besame Vino and Drink Light. It is great to have you on here, and thanks again. How can people follow you? Not get a hold of you. I know you want to keep your privacy, but how can they follow you? What's the best social media that you like to use?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so you can find me if you type in Victoria Brodsky or Tori Brodsky, you'll find me on both. You can also reach out at victoriabrodsky.com. There, I also have links to all my social media where you can follow or get a hold of me and that sort of thing.
Cool.
Thank you, Eric. This was wonderful.
Great. Appreciate it.
I'm Eric with Leadership Developed. If you like this video with Tori Brodsky, do us a favor. Hey, give us a thumbs up. Also, hit subscribe so you can follow future episodes of our show. Also, help build our community of growing leaders to build better communities. If you missed any of our previous videos, check it out. They're right over here. We will talk to you again next week.